Hello, everyone. I'm Stephanie Liraldo, Director of Graduate Recruitment and Outreach. On behalf of the University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley, and the Graduate College, I'd like to welcome and thank you for joining us for this very exciting Facebook Live event, where we will be hearing from our distinguished guests in just a few minutes over the topic of microlearning in the digital age. The Frontier Lecture Series was created to bring guest speakers to the university to have discussions relevant in today's world pertaining to technology. Today's session is brought to you by the Graduate College and the Educational Technology Program. To give you some background, UTRGV was established in 2015 and has quickly become the fourth largest institution in the UT system. Within the Graduate College, we offer a total of 6 doctoral, 58 master's, and over 40 graduate certificate programs. Of those programs, some of the fastest growing master's degrees are those offered in the accelerated 100% online format. Our Educational Technology Master's Program is one of the accelerated online programs that has been named one of the best online programs in the country by bestcolleges.com and collegechoice.net. Without further ado, today's webinar will be moderated by Drs. René and Maria Elena Corbeil. Dr. Joseph René Corbeil has been 37 years teaching experience in public and higher education and has specialized in online education for the past 20 years. He is a professor of educational technology and is the program coordinator for the Master of Education. Dr. Maria Elena Corbeil has 18 years of online teaching experience in higher education and adult education. She is a professor of educational technology who teaches online accelerated courses for the Master of Education in Educational Technology and coordinates 2 fully online undergraduate EdTech minors. In 2019, Drs. René and Maria Elena co-edited an award-winning book by Dr. Badrul titled Responsible Analytics and Data Mining in Education, which won 2 outstanding book awards from the Association of Educational Communications and Technology. They are currently collaborating with Dr. Khan on a 3rd edited book titled Microlearning in the Digital Age, the Design and Delivery of Learning in Snippets, which is scheduled for release in April or May of this year.
Microlearning is all the rage, but what is it exactly? What does a successful microlearning object look like? And how sound are the pedagogical practices surrounding microlearning design and implementation? These are among the most common questions people ask about microlearning in the digital age. Although the term has been around since at least around 2002, the proliferation of smartphones and tablets combined with the explosive growth of social media over the past decade has brought the concept of personalized mobile learning through bite-sized learning snippets to the forefront. According to a recent report by the Association for Talent Development, microlearning is one of the most widely discussed and deep debated trends in the learning industry today. In this webinar, guest panelists Dr. Badrul Khan and Dr. Karl Kapp will examine the recent phenomenon of microlearning happening in education, professional development, corporate training, and personalized learning. So without further ado, let's meet our panelists.
Thank you, René. We're very excited to have Dr. Karl Kapp with us today. He's an award-winning professor of instructional technology at Bloomsburg University in Bloomsburg, Pennsylvania, where he teaches instructional game design, gamification, and online learning design. He is the director of Bloomsburg Institute for Interactive Technologies and is recognized internationally as an expert in the application of games, game thinking, and gamification to learning. Dr. Kapp earned his doctoral degree from the University of Pittsburgh. He has authored or co-authored 8 books, including The Gamification of Learning and Instruction, its accompanying field book, and the widely popular Play to Learn. His latest co-authored book with Robin DeFelice is Microlearning Short and Sweet. Great title. Dr. Kapp has authored 10 LinkedIn learning courses, including How to Increase Learner Engagement, and has been a TEDx speaker. We also thank Dr. Kapp for writing the foreword to our book.
Thank you, Maria Elena. Dr. Badrul Khan is a world-renowned author, speaker, and consultant in the fields of e-learning and educational technology, and is recognized as one of the foremost leaders in open and distance education around the world. He is credited with coining the term web-based instruction and popularizing the concept through his 1997 best-selling book of the same name, which paved the way for the new field of e-learning. Dr. Khan has been honored with many awards and worldwide acclamation throughout his career. On April 27, 2015, he was inducted into the United States Distance Learning Association Hall of Fame. He currently hosts his own TV show, Khan's Digital World, on a Fox affiliate in Washington, D.C. Dr. Khan has a connection to UTRGV in that he established the Master of Education in Educational Technology between 1994 and 1997. I was very fortunate to have worked with him as his research assistant while he was writing his best-selling book, Web-Based Instruction. So it is with great pleasure that I welcome Dr. Badrul Khan home to the place where his distinguished career started.
Thank you, Vinay. Let's get started with the questions. Dr. Kapp, we've been hearing a lot about microlearning lately. Is it a new phenomenon? And when did it appear on your radar?
Yeah, it's as old as radio. So the interesting thing is, I remember back in the early 2000s, an organization called the Advanced Distributed Laboratories, a quasi-government organization, had this thing called SCOs or SCOs, Shareable Content Objects. So way back then, people were talking about small learning or chunks of learning or elements of learning, not the whole thing. So that's probably where it first came on my radar, and I thought, oh, this is kind of interesting. But I kind of filed it away in the back of my mind for a while because it was at that point still a little impractical. So we didn't really have learning from everywhere. We didn't have our mobile devices that we could just download something. The internet was not ubiquitous. So then fast forward several decades, actually, or a decade or so, or it all blurs together. But now we've got the ability to bring learning right to our mobile devices with more power in this device than we sent people to the moon. So now we can provide learning in all kinds of ways in short, effective bits. Nobody's going to watch, 4 hours of instruction on a phone, but they will watch 5 minutes or a small snippet of information. So that's really kind of where my interest grew. And then my work through gamification really brought me to think about microlearning more deeply, because gamification is the element of motivation. But motivating to learn, you have to have a good piece of instruction to learn from. And I saw some of the microlearning was not as effective as maybe I had hoped. And so I thought, well, if you identify a problem, then you've got to solve the problem. And so then I put together the book with Robin, Dr. Felice, and we created the book Microlearning Short and Sweet.
Thank you.
Dr. Khan, when did microlearning first appear on your radar?
Well, thank you. I appreciate the question. Actually, in 2007, I authored an article called Learning Snippets. So learning snippets, I mean that, learning should be, in a snippetized meaningfully. So the recent incident, my wife, Dr. Kamal Khan, she works for FAA. She wanted to go to Orlando to attend a conference. I usually don't go to conference if I'm not speaking. So this time I had to pay my way through because I stayed with her, at least accommodation was reasonable. So I went there. And I didn't even register for the, session. So I went, and here Karl's speaking. He was giving Karl Kapp. Karl Kapp was giving the microlearning presentation and keynote, and I did not really know him. So when I was hearing, I was liking it, So I said to him, ask him the little question about something, and he answered, and he kind of recognized me that he used the web-based training book or web-based instruction book, I believe. was in at the University of, and I think he's one of his mentors, has written an article here, Crossman, I believe. Good. So he recognized me, and I felt someone knows me because I was there. I was not attending as a participant. So then we had lunch together, and I liked the idea of microlearning. But I had more to say about my learning snippets, and he kind of encouraged me in a way. So later on, he agreed to write the foreword for the book, which is wonderful. So folks, Karl Kapp is the guy when it comes to video games in instructional design way, and we are so happy to have him with him. Okay, that's how microlearning to my radar. And you know, Dr. René Courbet, both Dr. René Courbet, Dr. Marielle Courbet, who are especially working with me on different kind of publication. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes, we hear you.
Good. There's some more. Right now, so I called René. I said, let's do a book on microlearning. So thank God, our book is almost out of the press. Very soon we'll be receiving it, Microlearning in Digital World. So it came to the radar. When something comes to my radar, you know, I take action. And I did that. And thank you for the question.
Thank you. This next question goes for Dr. Khan as well. We've been talking a little bit about microlearning in the digital age, which will be coming out in April or May. And Maria Elena and I have been actually working with revising our curriculum over the last couple of years to bring in elements of things that we see in the news as emerging topics, and microlearning has been on our radar for a while as well. In fact, now we've modified some of the deliverables in some of our courses so that students will be developing microlearning objects as one of the types of products that they will develop through the program. Dr. Khan, in the book, you compare microlearning objects to single droplets of water, where each droplet represents a bite-sized, single objective unit of instruction that can stand alone or contribute to a larger enterprise. You explain that just as the ocean is comprised of an infinite number of single drops of water, each droplet has the same properties as the vast ocean. So in creating small units of instruction, we need to take into consideration the larger learning enterprise from which they come and apply some common standards in their development. Can you elaborate on how your e-learning framework can be used to design, develop, evaluate, and implement effective microlearning snippets with appropriate instructional strategies and delivery methods?
Okay, there's a good loaded question. I hope my answer is shorter than your question. Okay, people think that micro means what they do. Micro means that you have your whole course, you just cut into pieces. No. Microlearning, as I define, is like this way. Let me do some. Okay, if you looked at it, you looked at me, right? You know. So microlearning is basically not. Hold on one second, please. I'm going to show you. So microlearning is basically must be interactive. Must be interactive, device independent, usable and accessible, single objective focused, short duration, retention boosting or just in time, independent but part of the whole, and has to be cost effective. Okay, so that is microlearning. Now, when I say ocean, so ocean of water, if you take a cup of water from Atlantic Ocean, it should have the same properties. If you take it from somewhere else, if it's not polluted, it should have the same properties. So when you design, if you think of an umbrella, it's a spoke of the umbrella, have learning objectives. So each objective must be meaningfully. You cannot teach multiplication without teaching addition and subtraction. So it has to be logically ordered. But each single objective focus microlearning units must have same quality and flavor. And how do you do that? That's why I have this. When you have this microlearning, that's why I have this framework. The framework gives the guidance. So you see, framework gives the guidance, so it becomes like this. And the book cover, we have it, that you need to pay attention to pedagogy, technology, all the 8 different dimensions. So all these 8 dimensions are guiding principles. So your microlearning, you can have these attributes like cost-effective, independent, but how you can make it same properties as a drop of water of Atlantic Ocean is by installing these octagonal elements: pedagogy, technology, interface design, management, evaluation, ethical consideration, institutional dimension. So this will give us a quality framework so that each part of microlearning unit would be in same quality like water in an ocean. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Khan. Dr. Kapp, Dr. Khan just shared that microlearning is a single objective, focused object. In your co-authored book with Robin DeFelice, Microlearning Short and Sweet, you debunk several myths around microlearning, including what it is and what it is not. Would you like to share with us your perspective on what microlearning is and how long it is?
Sure. So Robin and I defined microlearning being as an instructional unit that provides a short engagement in an actively environment that's intentionally designed to elicit a specific response from whoever happens to be the participant. So we focused a couple things that were interesting. One is we didn't necessarily want to call it a learner. We wanted to call it a participant because you may learn how to change a faucet in your shower using microlearning step by step, but you might not remember how to do that the next day. You might have to go back to that microlearning. So you temporarily learned what you needed to learn to do that process. So we thought, well, and some people call that performance support. So there is an argument in the industry whether that's performance support or whether it's actually learning. I tend to think it's learning, but I could be persuaded, kind of, sort of. But I think you're learning to do it and applying it as you're doing it, and then you don't necessarily have that recall. The other thing that we thought about in terms of, so participant was very important to us. The other thing that we thought about, and echoing what Dr. Khan had said, is it needs to be active. It needs to be single focused. Some of the myths are that, and Dr. Khan pointed this out, that you could chop up a 60-minute course into 10 6-minute videos, and that's microlearning. It doesn't really work that way, but you have to be a little bit deliberate about it and have that framework, as Dr. Khan said, about the item. The other myth that I like to talk about is that microlearning is not the cure for everything. It's part of a larger system. So, for example, if Sully Sullenberger, who landed the plane on the Hudson, right? He did not learn how to land that plane through a series of microlearning modules. He spent hours in a simulator, hours teaching people, hours on gliders. So he had deep, rich knowledge. So it's really important for us, although there are lots of benefits of microlearning, to realize it's one piece of a larger, as the ocean or learning ecosystem or whatever it happens to be. When people see the benefits of microlearning, sometimes they decide that, oh, let's make all of our education microlearning. And that's really not the best approach, because you miss some of that deep knowledge and deep understanding. So that's really how I view and think about microlearning, both from the individual droplet perspective, but also from the ocean or ecosystem perspective.
Thank you.
Dr. Khan, how do you define microlearning? And how long is a microlearning event?
First of all, microlearning, when you synthesize education, you have to use the Bloom taxonomy, low cognitive to high cognitive. Whatever, like a microlearning, we say that, you know, a single focus, internet, engage, can be digitally, 3 to 5 minutes video, or you can have a flashcard. You just can have a flashcard also, you know, non-digitally. And so it's that you don't do everything micro-learning. What you do, you synthesize and also blend, make it hybrid when it's needed. So go to Bloom's taxonomy. Can you teach low cognitive level using asynchronous method, or sometimes you need synchronous, sometimes you need blended. So it's all about blending, whatever ways it works good for you. Sometimes video is good for high cognitive level content. Sometimes mnemonics is good for low cognitive level content. So what you need to do, think about independent but part of the whole thing. And has to be single focused, single objective focused, and that helps the professors and teachers to create microlearning so they can think about creating one after one, you know, slowly, and give them enough time. And it's good for the students because they don't get, because their attention span is not that great these days because everything going on the screen, you know. So we need to have a focused, single focused learning unit, whether it is digital or it's non-digital, but it has duration and it instructional strategies you can employ for the learning to be engaged and interactive, but there must be an judgment and assessment from your learning.
Thank you, Dr. Khan. Dr. Kapp needs to leave a bit early, so Dr. Kapp will use this opportunity to ask you the next question in an area that's your expertise along with microlearning. With your expertise in instructional game design, gamification, and online learning design, how can gamification be integrated into microlearning to increase learning, retention, and application? We know this could be an entire course that you could give, but in the 5 minutes you have left with us.
Sure. So interesting question. So one of the things, I give an example of my son when he was studying for the SAT. And I said, hey, Nick, why don't you spend a couple of minutes every day studying some SAT words? And that way, you know, you'll know it. I know a little bit about learning and education. I think that might be valuable to you. And he's like, Dad, that's the stupidest idea I ever heard. I'm not going to do that. You don't know anything. I can't believe you're a professor. So I'm like, all right, fine. And 3 days later, he comes home and goes, Dad, check out this cool app. I earn points every time I get a vocabulary word correct. I'm on the leaderboard. I'm already number 5 on the leaderboard, which I think is kind of funny. He was gamifying the process. So there's lots of things that we don't like to do, but would be helpful for us to do on a regular basis. And we just don't often have the motivation to do that, or we kind of think we have to do it, but something else more pressing or more what we perceive at the moment more valuable takes over. So one of the things that gamification does is it adds a layer of engagement and activity on top of that microlearning. So it kind of gently nudges us and reminds us that we should be studying that vocabulary word every day or studying that little piece of information. The amazing thing is the research, like the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve and all the other research about the value of spacing content out over time versus cramming it together is pretty overwhelming in terms of what it can do for you. But again, we don't always think that way, and the traditional educational system is pretty set up that, you know, twice a semester you cram as much information as you possibly can in for your exam. You ace the exam the next day or do pretty well, and then 3 weeks later you don't remember anything that was on the exam because it's all out of your head. So if we do employ micro-learning a little bit over time and encourage people to do that through game elements such as story or I always like to use cliffhangers at the end of my micro-learning. Stay tuned next time and you'll learn this. And if you're like, tell us now, Dr. Kapp, I'm like, no, you have to wait till next week. So some of those elements, or getting on the leaderboard, some of those elements are really kind of exciting in terms of helping people get engaged. And then the other thing is, a lot of people think of gamification as only points, badges, and leaderboards, but actually it's much more. It's the sense of story, it's the freedom to fail, it's the idea of feedback loops, it's the idea of unlocking new content and ideas. So oftentimes we'll have content that if you earn a certain element of success, you unlock like valuable content that supplements or augments what you're learning about as well. And then, the students that have unlocked that kind of, tell to the students that haven't. And it's kind of a nice way of making knowledge, the seeking of knowledge and the unlocking of knowledge, actually valuable. And, that's what we want to do when we deal with students. We want to help them see the value of knowledge and what that will do for them. So that's how gamification and microlearning kind of work together. Gamification, I view that as the motivation to get students to want to do a little bit of information all the time. And then the microlearning is the knowledge or the information that really is valuable to them. So that's how the two, in my mind, work together. And I just wanted to thank Dr. Khan and both of you, Maria and Renee, for one, asking me to write the foreword to the book. It was my privilege. I really enjoy the book. It was great information and great content. So thank you for including me in that. And it was great to, see Dr. Khan at that conference. And I'm like, oh my gosh, we used his book in many of our classes. So that was fun. And I really enjoyed reading the book. The proofs were really insightful. I learned a lot from reading it. So thanks everyone. And best of luck with your microlearning.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you,
Kapp.
Karl. Thank you, Karl.
Okay, the next question, we've already touched on it. Both you and Dr. Kapp touched on it. Berkowitz, in a 2017 article titled "How to Create Engaging Microlearning Content," asserted that true microlearning is intentional. It is built on purpose. How can the e-learning framework be used to review an organization's existing learning environment from the perspective of what works and what doesn't, and recommend various cost-effective, efficient, and meaningful training solutions based on the organization's learning culture?
Well, we did in 2007 article, I tried to argue that there is a difference between instruction versus information. When I was there at the University of Texas, I started writing on my book on web-based instruction, where Dr. Rene Corday, you are one of my researchers on this book. When working on this book, at that time, I was thinking more like, is there any web-based instruction being done? That I see that companies and corporates have their own website, but not any instructional website. So that's why I started working on the book web-based instruction. So there's a difference between instruction versus information. Instruction must be designed with instructional design principles and strategies for one can learn. Whereas information about camera and the website of camera can have a description, information about the camera, that is information side. But if someone has to learn how to operate this camera, that's instructional. So there's a between information versus instruction. Now with the microlearning, in my 2007 article, as I was saying, that I argued that there might be informational snippets and there should be instructional snippets. So our book on microlearning, the seeds germinated those days of me of thinking of creating snippetizing education. Microlearning is other way could be said as snippets of learning. Now, the question is that, well, as we said, like microlearning has to be interactive, short duration, device independent, it has to be usable, accessible, has to be single objectives. So these are attributes. But actually, you do need a guidance to create each unit of the microlearning design such a way that one can say that, well, so this has the same quality, same flavor. So the learners, when they're taking one unit of microlearning, they are basically will feel this is how things should be. The expectation that for the microlearning unit has an objective. We'll have some strategies, some engaging unit, and then there'll be assessment. So when they get used to this thing and these using these guidelines of octagonal framework, which is you can see in here, if you do the microlearning, you do have these attributes you want, but you want pedagogy, you want technology. So these are the things that you use as a guidelines. So I will talk about that a little more about this, you know. So what are the, you say, what guidelines is your octagonal framework, is this one. See? So you put the learner at the center, and I can even show it here, here. If you can look at it, in here, you put the learner at the center, you see, and pedagogy. What the pedagogy does? Pedagogy deals with learning and teaching issues. Technology. Technology, you need hardware, you need software, also you need infrastructure, like Wi-Fi or broadband. And then you need interface design. Interface design, you need to see look and feel of that screen. They will probably have a small smartphone or maybe a big TV, or they can have a computer. But look and feel how you design all the navigation. You have to be careful. You understand they are, if they're digitally, only thing they have in front of them is that electronic device. So you need to design it. Interface has to be very valid and logical. Evaluation. This evaluation is so evaluation includes assessment of learners and the evaluation of instructors and all the support staff, plus how the course is designed and developed. So that needs to be focused on management. You know, when you go to our classroom, we take our notebook, start writing on the whiteboard or blackboard. But in online, if you course online, all the links and then materials that you, and this has to be managed well. So content management, course materials management, and maintenance are the management of e-learning or microlearning. Then you have the resource support here. Resource support is that you need a technical support. You need library support. You need counseling support. You have to make them available to students, if possible, digitally. Ethical consideration, that is a very mega area of consideration. Like plagiarism, copyright issues, then you have to have like intellectual property, copyright issues, geographical diversity. If I am in 8 in the morning in Washington, D.C., one of my students digitally, synchronously with me in Hawaii, it will be so early for him, it's 4 in the morning, he cannot wake up to learn, to participate in online discussion. So no synchrony is that kind of thing. So it's a geographical diversity is an ethical consideration. Then learner diversity. So many diversity, as long as you know, you are ethically considerate about your online education, you have to think through this thing. Then come institutional. Well, if a student is taking a course online, he will be requiring all academic, administrative, and student services that you can provide. Because they said, I'm paying my tuition. If I'm going to campus, I'm not going but you still charge me the same tuition because I'm not using the air conditioner there or, facilities there. I'm at my home learning. Should my tuition be lower than when I pay when I go on campus? So these are many issues. So to sum up this, e-learning is not something that that you think that you have an LMS and you present your course in there. No, it is a complete lifestyle of a life of a student in the digital world. They are not with you, they're somewhere else. You need to start thinking about what are the issues. I, with my octagonal framework, was only able to show what I found, these issues, but there may be numerous myriad issues that we don't know about COVID-19. We just did a book coming up next month. It's called International E-Learning Frameworks, and we have 16 different countries share based on this framework, their experience after COVID-19. So what we need to start thinking about, that we have to think about our students. They are not with us. And because of them, we are on business. We are in business. So we need to pay attention to the issues important for them. At the same time, we have to be logically and we have to be legally bound by international rules and regulations so that we don't get into problem of plagiarism, copyright issues, and we want to make sure the learning, microlearning, is competency-based. They can learn and they can perform when they're asked to. Thank you.
Thank you. I just got a text message from a student that says, this is one of our master's students in educational technology. It says, Dr. Corbet, great show, very informative. Could you please elaborate a little bit more on how long microlearning is? I don't really get the idea. I'm not getting it. So that is kind of a good question, because there really is no single correct answer. It really depends on who you ask. For example, if you were to ask the folks at the Association for Talent Development, they actually tried to quantify it in a 2017 research study, and they said that longer than 2 minutes, but shorter than 5 minutes. Karl Kapp, in his book that he co-edited with Robin Depelis, The Microlearning Short and Sweet, they say that the exact number is not universally agreed upon. That we've seen time frames from as a few seconds to as long as an hour. Carla Torgerson, who's an author in our book, she says that with informal learning that's not required, people will tend to gravitate towards things that they can consume in about 4 minutes or less. She actually discusses 4 major uses of microlearning, and each one of those uses has a typical different duration. For example, she identifies preparation or pre-work as something that's assigned prior to a formal learning event, and that can take as much as 10 minutes. She says that examples of different type of learning objects could be an e-learning module, a video, a podcast, or just some text-based resources. She also identifies follow-up as a type of microlearning event to boost learning after a learning event. And she says that that can take as little as 1 minute using things like infographics. Then there is the standalone short-term learning that can be considered either informal learning, which she says could take about 4 minutes, and more formalized learning, which can go up to 8 minutes. And then there's what Karl Kapp referred to as performance support to reach or reinforce skill mastery or development. And that could take anywhere from 5 seconds to 5 minutes. Now, these are all just guesstimates. It really varies. I like the definition that J.D. Dillon gave in a paper that he wrote, a research report, he says that it should be as short as possible to address a specific measurable objective and fit within the audience's available time. So if I were to have to provide an answer to how long microlearning is, I would say I would go along with Dylan's definition that it should be as short as possible, but I would qualify it also by saying as long as necessary, taking into consideration the learner's available time and attention span.
Thank you, Renee. In the time that we have left together, about 10 minutes, I'd like to ask Renee and then Dr. Khan, what do you see as the future of microlearning?
Do you want to go first, Dr. Khan, or would you like me to go first?
Well, first of all, you know, we know because of COVID-19, we have changed, and there is a paradigm shift in education. We have a new norm in education. In this new norm of education, our students will be using, or citizens of the world will be using a lot of digital methods. As I said in my Fox 5 class, Washington, D.C., KDW Khan's Digital World TV show, always I say that we are living in a physical world, but around us there is another world created called digital world. So what do we do on the physical world, it has implication on the physical world. So we need to learn how to balance between our existence in the physical world and our activities on the digital world. If you order pizza, you can order it digitally, but when the pizza comes, so it is physical, right? So we need to learn, or we need to educate ourselves that how we can balance between our existence in the digital world as being a citizens of the two worlds. One is physical world and the digital world. Having said that, so the future is very not predictable for many of us. We never predicted we're going to be hit by COVID-19. It did, and it devastated our economy, our health, and it changed our education system, which got flat-footed and got educators unprepared, underprepared, same thing for students too. So from this experience, we have learned we cannot really rely on anything anymore. So we need to start thinking about that we have to be open-minded. We can close system of education in a classroom. We have to be a flexible way of thinking. Or design of education, whether it's microlearning or it is a full course. But microlearning is useful because it's single objective focus. Now, people question about, you cannot put a time on 3 to 5 minutes. It is the complexity of this objective. If the objective is what is microlearning, in this way, only 2 minutes video, I said, no, somebody asked me a question about what is e-learning. So within 2 minute video, I have that on YouTube. I said, e-learning, E means electronic devices. I showed all the devices, and learning means you need to know the instructional design. Together, any electronic devices, you use it for learning purposes, that is e-learning. So that video, the objective was, what is e-learning? So that was the one objective, right? The students will be able to learn, define what is e-learning. So I showed that video, that took 2 minutes, actually. So depending on the complexity of the way it's like in Bloom's taxonomy for low cognitive to high cognitive, some objectives may require more time. But you have to have a single objectives. You know, you may have to use a lot of engaging, interactive videos, audios, as Karl Kapp was saying. So what you need to do, nobody can quantify their length. We all want short, obviously, but it doesn't have to be short in a sense that because there is a time you have to finish by 3. No, that in umbrella, each scope of the umbrella has objectives. If one of the objectives may require longer time than other, but it has in its heart is a single objective focus. So duration, it may vary. Okay. was going to say, what's going to happen to the world? Is the world is going as we are going. We're going to learn to be sensitive about our surroundings, sensitive about our students' issues, our policies, and sensitive about the employment for them. But I know universities, the way it is now as a brick and mortar universities, may not exist too long. Micro credentials, micro credits, competency based, maybe will be the norm of the world. I don't know. Because when I talked about web-based instruction in 95, people say, oh, it's not going to work, you know? So I'm not making a predictions, but what I'm seeing, as I'm seeing, people are busy. If Bill Gates, who has not completed his degree for Harvard, he was a Harvard dropout, you can say that. Being a dropout, he becomes the world's largest employer for many, many years. Would he hire someone who graduated from traditional degree to be successful in his company? I question that. The reason is, if he hasn't finished a degree, but he is one of the brightest, revolutionize the way we think, revolutionize the way our healthcare industry, many different ways in influence, so that should someone who learns with the competency, who has the competency. So the world of future would be competency-based. It will be synergized where customer sensitive and customers are our learners. Thank you.
Thank you. I guess if you would ask me what the future is, before I give you my answer, let me tell you what one of our authors, Hall and Hamilton from our book, they're contributors for the book, have some very interesting ideas about the future of microlearning. Some of the things that they envision is that there's going to be a change in higher education from earning degrees to developing skills. And this could be either a warning for institutions of higher education or an opportunity. It depends on how we look at it and how we choose to react. They also envision a shift from a push paradigm for learning where content is assigned to the learners to a pull paradigm where the learners and workers seek content when needed. And then they also envision the Internet of Things, tools and devices like Alexa, Google Assistant, and Siri are going to be playing a much bigger role. They're beginning to play a huge role, but they'll be able to play a bigger role for time and place independent learning. Sometimes when I'm washing dishes, as I'm washing, I may ask Alexa to, explain something to me, and I'll watch a video while I'm washing dishes. They also predict that learning will adapt to the learner. So we're talking about AI in this context, that instead of the learner adapting to the learning, the learning will adapt to the learner. And they end by talking about a concept called nano-learning, which they say is a form of microlearning that takes less than a minute to complete. But what they say that's a little different and unique about it is that it's ongoing and it's all the time. So we're learning every moment of the day while we're awake through these nano-learning events. My own personal opinion is that microlearning has become a normal way most people consume content and teach themselves new things. It's only a matter of time before it becomes more intentionally embedded into traditional education. And I think that the sudden transition to online and remote learning due to the pandemic is hastening its adoption. That's what I think.
Thank you, Dr. Khan and Dr. Corbet. Thank you, Dr. Kapp and Dr. Khan, for sharing your experience with us today. As we come to the end of our session, we'd like to thank both of you. We also thank our colleagues in the UTRGV Graduate College, Dr. Grewal, Stephanie Leralde, and Nathaniel Garcia. We greatly appreciate your support, know-how, and enthusiasm. If you want to see what's possible with microlearning, please contact us in the Additional Technology program. And check out the Microlearning book that will be coming out soon. For the program, we have fully online accelerated masters in EdTech and 3 graduate certificates where you get to develop products that meet the needs in your current or future workplace. Our website is www.utrgv.edu/tech, or follow us on Twitter at I'm Ready, and Facebook, we're EDTC Online. Thank you so much for time with us today. We certainly learned a lot and appreciate you being here.
Thank you all.